they even said, okay, Britain can come and rule over the independent Cookie land and allow us to form a Christian kingdom and enjoy our resources alone.
A section of the cookies now raised the demand for the integration of the cookie inhabited areas of Karbi Anglong, integrating these areas with the cookie inhabited areas of Manipur so that they can fulfill their dream of the establishment of their imaginary cookie land.
Would allow the Western countries like US, UK, Canada, and the European Union to run their geopolitics and keep both India and China closely at check.
So, first of all, namaste and a very good morning to all our listeners. We're very happy to be back after a very, very long break. We have two of our speakers with us today who are no strangers to this platform, Dr. Ankita Datta and Sri Vladimir Adithya. Keeping your request in mind, Ankita ji, I am keeping it as a very quick introduction, especially but we need an introduction for our new listeners. So Dr. Ankita Datta, who hails from Assam, is a committed researcher, columnist, and author. She is an authority on studies of Hindu cultural heritage and the civilization of the northeast of Bharat. After her PhD from JNU, which was based on the traditional belief systems of the Vaishnavas of Assam and Arunachal Pradesh, she undertook several research projects based on culture and demographics of Assam. Ankita ji has done extensive research for the Indic Academy, including studies on Shakti worship in the Northeast. She is also associated with the Center for Indic Studies at the Indus University, Ahmedabad, where she herself has designed and taught several courses on the culture and civilization of Northeast of Bharat. A committed columnist and writer for Mind Makers with almost 70 articles to her credit, Ankita ji is currently co-authoring a book with Srimati Manushi Sinha Rawal and Sri Vladimir Adityanath ji, which is titled The Manipur Conundrum, History, Conversion and Exodus, which will be published soon. Ankita ji, it's absolutely great and an honor to have you back with us here on Satyamev Jayati. Thank you so much for joining us. And now quickly moving on to our next speaker, Vladimir ji, Sri Vladimir Adityanath ji. Vladimir Adityanath, his name being a pseudonym, is a dedicated grassroots level activist and a political analyst who hails from Bengal. Vladimir ji has been painstakingly documenting the atrocities committed on the Hindus and other Janajatis of Meghalaya, as well as the changes in the demography, conversions, etc. All of it based on the collection of ground reports on victims of these atrocities and statements of eyewitnesses. He has been actively spreading awareness by writing several articles and sharing regular posts on different social media platforms. As mentioned earlier, Vladimir ji is also a co-authoring the book The Manipur Conundrum, History, Conversion and Exodus along with Ankita ji and Srimati Manushi Sinha. Despite frequent threats to life and career, Vladimir ji continues to persist in his dangerous mission. It's indeed an honor to have you amongst us on this platform. Vladimir ji, thank you so much. Dr. Ankita Datta, Vladimir Adityanath ji, it's an honor. Thank you so much. We look forward to your mind-blowing eye-opener of a talk. Over to you.
Thank you, Vidya ji. As always, an excellent introduction. And Dr. Ankita ji and Vladimir are no stranger to us. They were here before, and their talk was quite a hit, as well as actually a very revealing session at that time. And we are looking forward to listen more about Manipur and what is happening over there. And once you are done, let us know. We will open it up for questions. Go ahead.
Namaste Vidya ji, namaste Ravi ji. Thank you so much for that humble introduction and the warm welcome. Our pranams to each and every member in the Clubhouse team for making this happen once again. It's always a pleasure to be back. We look forward to the conversation ahead. Regarding this current situation in Manipur, yes, we all know the situation at present is still very, very fragile, and the violence has been raging on since last year, since March, April 2023, and there is still no end in sight. But what we have often seen in the mainstream media platforms is the is the way in which this tragedy has been defined as a proxy war, as an ethnic conflict, as an ethnic clash. So, you know, these are certain terms which have failed to explain the real reasons behind this violence and also its long term consequences. The conflict goes beyond something called ethnicity or ethnic boundaries. The genocide that is happening systematically, the genocide of the Hindu majority indigenous Meitei Manipuris, Vishnupriya Manipuris, Gorkhas, Tamil Hindus, Biharis, and Bengalis who have been residing in Manipur for a long time now and considered for whom Manipur is their home. This genocide is going on for over 400 days now. And immediately after the election results were out, the Lok Sabha election results, Kuki terrorists began launching large scale terror attacks in Jiribam district, which is situated at the Manipur Assam border. The Meiteis of Jiribam, the local Meiteis, they were attacked mercilessly. Their houses were burnt, and it was reported that over 2,000 people were displaced by the 13th of June. Now, why did these terrorists, why did they choose Jiribam in particular? Now, see, we need to connect several dots here together, okay? Because Jiribam is a critical communications hub. It connects Manipur with the rest of Bharat. There have been many attempts earlier as well by Christian Kuki terrorists to halt the construction of the crucial Imphal Jiribam railway connectivity project in whatever way they can. The larger objective behind this particular project that I'm talking about, the Imphal Jiribam railway project, is to connect all the state capitals of India with the Northeast. So it has its own strategic and economic significance for not just Northeast India but for the rest of Bharat as well. It is definitely going to help India in its defense and military operations to counter Chinese influence over Myanmar and Southeast Asia. But as I said, the construction work of this infrastructure project has been frequently disturbed by church funded militant outfits in the region. Many engineers, technicians, supervisors involved in this project from different parts of the country, they have been shot, they have been kidnapped, they have been killed by unknown miscreants. So militancy is a major, it was always a major security concern in Jiribam, and especially for these site engineers and supervisors uh, who are being threatened by threat calls, messages. They are being attacked, firing. They are kidnapped for ransom. So as a result of these and several other such criminal cases of abduction of railway workers, supervisors, and engineers from the project sites, panic workers have already fled these places. Now, Manipur, as we all know, keeping Jiribam in mind, Manipur is a sensitive border state of Bharat that constitutes the gateway to the Southeast Asian continent. And since it is a landlocked state, for the audience, in the audience who might not be aware, Manipur is a landlocked state and its very existence depends upon depends upon territories that pass through the Christian tribal dominated areas. And these areas are all militancy infested. They are infested with militants. So the objective of the anti-India forces is very, very clear: to divide India, to destabilize Bharat on all the possible fault lines that they can, so that they can stop our economic progress. So if we see, then we will be able to understand that all these major infrastructure and connectivity projects that not only connect the Northeast with the rest of Bharat, but also facilitate connectivity between Bharat and Southeast Asia, such as the India-Myanmar Thailand Trilateral Highway, the Kaladan Multimodal Transit and Transport Project, they all pass through Manipur. So we can therefore understand how a disturbed and destabilized Manipur, if Manipur continues to remain disturbed and destabilized, it clearly benefits the anti-India hostile forces. The people who instigated this violence, the instigators of this violence that began more than a year ago, last year in March, April 2023, the people who instigated this violence, the perpetrators, I mean, they know very well how to establish their hold over the war of narratives. And they are doing exactly that now. They know it very well that the moment they play the victim card, all their crimes and antisocial and anti-legal activities that they are engaged in, all of that will be whitewashed and overlooked by the Indian state. They also know this fact very well that our intelligence, the Indian state, and as well as the army cannot initiate any strong action against them. Why? For the obvious fear of being labeled as anti-minority. By whom? By the Western powers and of course their well-funded, powerful lobbies. So in this way, they have ensured the safety and security of the drug economy and various other illegal cartels that they run in Manipur, especially in the border districts like Chudachandpur. So it is very important, therefore, to dissect the so many different hidden layers of this conflict in order to arrive at a holistic understanding of the issue. The perpetrators of this violence today, it would not be an exaggeration to say that today they are able to exercise their control and domination over all spheres of human activity in the border districts of Manipur, especially because of the fact that either the Indian state is non-existent in these areas or the state is too afraid to venture into these regions for the obvious fear of being labeled as anti-minority or for being targeted on the ground of violation of minority rights. So uh, so quite long back, before 2023, when the violence began, the ground was already made fertile for this genocide and ethnic cleansing of the native inhabitants of the region, to completely change the cultural ecosystem, to completely change the cultural makeover of Manipur as such. Because after that, after this genocide is complete, it is going to be a homogeneous population with a homogeneous religious identity, and these people can then be easily influenced by the calls for separatism and separate administration. The Hindus of Manipur, their population is declining almost every decade, and at present they are being pushed towards further annihilation because of the current violence. Every day we get to hear news about the blockade of essential goods, extortion, and terrorist attacks on truck drivers who were attempting to carry essentials to the Imphal Valley, where a majority of these Maitis reside. Uh, these kinds of news have become so frequent every day, and these blockades have caused shortages of essential supplies of food, medicines, and as well as steep price hikes. So the future, it does not at all bode well for the Dharmic civilization in Manipur.
Thank you. Namaste everyone. I used pseudonym Vladimir Adithya Nath, and it's a pleasure to be back here. So first of all, whenever we are coming into this situation, current situation, we have to observe various aspects. Like Ankita ji was very clearly explaining, I would like to start with the situation currently which is being observed. There are three major inputs and outputs to Imphal Valley. One is from the north through the National Highway 2, which is known as the NH2. Two major inputs come from Jiribam, around Jiribam area, which is the National Highway 37, as well as the other one, which is with the railway line from up to Imphal, which is planned to be up to Imphal. So this railway line and these places are the major communication nodes. And the third one is our Act East project, the gateway of it, which I will explain a bit later through More. So this gateway, which is present there, is the third part. Now the cookies has been systematically taking over these inputs and outputs of the state since 1990. The Kuki-Naga clashes which happened in 1992 were not mere ethnic clashes. They had clear military objectives, the Kukis unlike the Nagas, and they systematically captured the More region and started dominating that region. Jiribam is another part. And NH2 in the Kangpokpi region also is another part which they have shown sincere efforts to dominate since 1992. So with this situation, like there has been regular blockades along the National Highway 2, National Highway 37. On April 16th, truck drivers carrying Indian oil convoys were shot, and there were lots. A truck driver was shot and wounded, and there has been repeated blockades, attacks, and issues, and there the state has not been able to take care of these blockades promptly and quickly. The same scenario or behavior which we see in Jammu in case of Kashmir or other issues to ensure the supply line to Kashmir, that Kashmir Valley, that same thing is not being done with Imphal Valley. There is a distinct difference between the treatment of Kashmir Valley and Imphal Valley with respect to keeping the supplies open. This is something we observe very clearly. There is no doubt about it. Now, this thing, what is the impact? By September itself, the prices of essential items like fish and food has raised by 30% to 50%. Each truck. Now, highway extortion racket has been a curse throughout the Northeast. Manipur, Nagaland, several states and other things, it goes beyond the state, and this has deep enough roots to even threaten governor or top politician level. So it is wrong to say that highway extortion was born from this, but the severity of the highway extortion has increased drastically due to that, because most of the militant groups, it's a misnomer. Most of the terrorist groups have been financing their weapons and paying their cadres through this extortion money. So for that, while previous extortion rates for many consumer goods trucks were around 20,000 to 25,000, max 30,000, now it goes up to 85,000. Essential goods trucks also extortion rates have doubled, and even 150% increase have seen. So this has been creating a major problem. Second major problem is finally the Manipuri society has managed to get the basic food requirements to a certain extent of the people who are living in relief camps. But a huge amount of financial help is required to rebuild houses, or some sincere effort from the government or statement is required to say that we will relocate them back to Churachandpur or their homes. Government has so far from November, any National Human Rights Commission has been repeatedly telling the government to pay compensation, but not a single penny of compensation has been paid so far to any of the victims, which is an extremely sad thing. Now, this thing has created a huge amount of problem there. Now, ahead of that, if we see the compensation and the building of houses also, the state government is taking care of the food, and they are also small scale, they are building up houses like 40 houses of Serao they have started building, and those things for villages at the edges of Imphal Valley. They have started doing that, but it is very slow, and there is no concrete steps to bring them back to their locations like More, like Ikao, north of Kangpokpi, and then south in Churachandpur, from where they had been displaced. Now, for this situation, as per of today, around around 40 to 50,000 in the middle of summer, based upon what estimates you are taking, people has been permanently displaced from around 30% of Manipur. So, indigenous Hindus have been wiped out basically from 30% of their landmass, and 10,000 hectares of land you cannot cultivate anymore because of sniper fires from the hills upon the farmers. Many farmers have lost their lives due to this sniper fire upon cows and animals doing grazing. In fact, there has been horrible instances of attacks on cows and bulls and killing them just to hurt dharmic sentiments. This has been repeatedly, conservative estimates say 3,500 cows have been shot just for fun, just for hurting sentiments, based upon what reports we have. So so these kind of things is affecting farming, it is affecting productivity. The highway blockade is also making economic recovery and business very difficult. The floods and other which has happened, the hailstorm that has taken a huge hit on the crops. The society is supporting itself But the major problem is there is a huge section in Manipur. We have to remember Manipur, after the merger agreement in 1949, for more than 20 years, it had been under basically, it had faced a lot of mismanagement, misgovernance, which had created a class of politicians whose main objective has been to incur the favor of central government in Delhi and stay in power without being accountable to the people. That same culture remains to a large extent. So, this is a major issue. And this problem has led to monopolization of the education system and the healthcare system by the church. And from the mid 70s and early 80s, there was huge Chinese influence. Even Chinese, there was large spread use of Chinese currencies in the early 80s around that time in Manipur. And for that reason, the Marxist influence and other things have created internal fault lines also in the society. So, even in this situation, where the 16 to 18 lakh population of Imphal Valley, including Manipuri, Gorkha, Marwari, all businessmen are suffering from essential shortages, it is becoming very difficult to create permanent bridges between people, or between the people of Manipur and the people of Bharat. The inaction and the lack of decisive response from the government is creating a very dangerous situation currently in the Imphal Valley. The situation which is there is initially it was anger towards the cookies, but now anger towards the cookies is also being replaced by separatism and gaining of power of militant groups and various and also this is leading to a lot of anger against misgovernance. Now the major problem is the there is very few people explaining in Manipur that the issue of yours is not unique. The indigenous people or the Sanatan Dharmavulambis or the Hindus of Bharat, the Bharatiya state has many places given a short deal to us, not just in Manipur. In fact, I would argue that Manipur, there is nothing new going on. Everything which is going on in Manipur can be seen in some other places or somewhere else in Bharat. You can find parallel examples. But the problem is systematically a section of the society is also trying to keep the people isolated. And the government of people Bharat and the people of Bharat are two different entities that they can find help from the people of Bharat. This integrating of society is proving to be extremely difficult due to vested interests and lot of people who actually want them to be isolated so that they want the problem to be solved, but the isolation and other things to remain so that the various local politics and local dynamics can continue unchanged. This is another major issue. Now, coming back to the next part, what is the situation in Manipur if you ask? In Manipur, another major point is that there is a severe crisis of land going on. Since 1990, there has been a steep increase in land prices between 100% to 300% per decade. And this price, if you compound it, it comes around 12 times to 15 times, depending upon the area, how much the land prices have increased. And now with this crisis, you have around 40 to 45% of people, based upon different estimates from different studies, living in around 4% usable land. Now, Manipur, the major issue has always been, even before this crisis, there was a land shortage because of the Meiteis not being able to buy land in the so-called hill districts, which we described in the previous session, the Hill Valley Divide, which I still think is one of the worst colonial policies and one of the root causes of this crisis. So this had already forced the Manipuri people to convert farmlands, lands designated as farmlands, into residential lands. Now, the huge corruption in the bureaucracy means each of these things, 20% of the price around that is taken as bribes. So the unofficial land price and the official land price there is a huge difference between that. Now, the church has been taking advantage of this. Even in small villages like Thanga or other things, there are 19 churches. So the use of the church, public churches, as land grabbing things, and the use of churches in private properties to play the victim card, the religious victim card, to prevent anti encroachment activities or to prevent government action against illegal occupation has been used in a large scale. In Imphal Valley, there are 700 plus well-known churches in public land and several hundreds more churches in private land, the legality of which is in extreme doubt. So this land grabbing had started from more than 3 generations ago. Kwakaithel is a very popular area, and there is a very well-known politician whose grandfather, from him the land area was bought. A large area of land in Kwakaithel was bought, and there the first thing was built was a church, and then series of wings or villages were built. This grabbing of land or buying of land with foreign fundings and church money at huge rates, much higher than market prices from poor farmers and even influential people, had started from 3 generations. So this had basically created a desperate situation for the Meiteis, that even within Imphal Valley, if people with ST status buys that land, it is very difficult to get it back from them unless they want to sell it. So basically, they are being driven out from their lands in this case. So ST effort was a desperate band-aid thing to try to get some scheduled protection for them also to stand equal rights. It's not just getting into the hills. It is about protecting their land in Imphal Valley also. But unfortunately, I think ST status is just a band-aid thing. They need comprehensive legislative reforms like the highly discriminatory Manipur Land Reforms and Land Revenue Act, the 1971 District Council Act, which actually gives the people with ST status in cookie dominated areas to basically impose taxes also upon people, legal taxes, in addition to the illegal taxes imposed by militants and other things, or the extortion things. Basically, it is almost like a sixth schedule or separate administration, which they had been enjoying. Then the 2002 disastrous SC/ST Amendment Acts and the 2022 Gazette notification, one particular, which gives indigenous status to all STs. So there are lots of laws and reforms which has to be changed. There is no shortcut which will save them. Maybe it will buy them at max 10 to 15 years. Now, with this situation of the land prices and the blockades of the inputs and outputs and the kind of vested interests going on, what has further complicated the situation is the attitude of every single political party. The ruling political party or the dispensation has been trying to sweep this issue under the carpet, both at the state and the central level. There has been an extreme disinterest from the government in answering RTIs or legitimate concerns which can address these issues raised from various independent bodies. Second issue is that whenever we are having this thing, there has been a coordinated effort. The Manipuri society is one of the first ones who built a 12-point charter, actually, to based on demands and demanded accountability from their government authorities. They had attempted to use various socio-cultural groups to unite their society and demand accountability from their government. However, instead of constructive things, a destructive attitude has been adopted by all parties. So-called opposition is trying to weaponize this issue, and they are blatantly sided with separatism and terrorism of the cookies, and they had also been raising this issue with their own vested interest, with no interest for solving the issue. And regarding the ruling party, they had also depended upon the muscle power. In Manipur or Northeast forever, there has been a very prominent part of using the church or the muscle power to win elections without taking into account the will of the people. So that same thing was tried there. The difference was that people were desperate. Various areas in Tengnopal and Churachandpur district, except the Turelwangma and other main More areas, many of the people there have not been able to vote for 30 to 40 years, ever since cookie demography had increased. Swarajya Jaydeep Majumdar has done an excellent report on it. It's highly recommended for you guys to go through it. So this is actually reality. So people were desperate to exercise their voting rights, and this led to clashes in 11 centers. Within voting centers, firing happened, people were shot. And the political parties had been trying to use armed thugs, gundas, as well as certain corrupt elements of the socio-cultural groups who were designed to protect the people of Manipur, to suppress the voices of the victims. Gun culture is rampant in Manipur, and previously the victims who were very willing and out in the open to give their statements to us and other people who are trying to address them are now terrified of their lives. This matter of putting politics, and even within the Manipuri society as well as outside with the rest of Bharat, there's a huge section of people who are diluting civilizational issues with politics. For them, the interests of various political parties or ideologies, left, right, center, whatever, is taking priority over the survival of the Hindu population there. There should be a high level committee which should actually study with the land prices, with this kind of social turbulence going on, what percentage of the society will be forced to migrate, because it is plenty clear that the agricultural people doing their livelihood, sustaining their livelihood with the help of agriculture, will no longer be able to pay the price of the land or sustain their living with respect to land prices within 10 years. It is absolutely clear. So, in that case, we will see large scale migrations which has nothing to do with the church but more to do with our failed policies and colonial legacies, which would only help the activities there. Now, this is what I would like to say about the current situation. So, it is a very severe situation, and we should not look into it. I will also tell that even among various Manipuri people who are living in Imphal Valley, there is a misconception that the violence did not reach to there, so maybe we'll push back, maybe we'll survive. The problem is that you do not need violence to drive people out anymore. There are lots of other tools available with modern coordination methods and with the access of the cookies with various foreign think tanks. This land price, this highway blockade, and the lack of political will to solve this from both sides, decisive action, I wouldn't say total lack of it, but the decisive action to take there is created a very deadly situation which might lead to larger mass migrations within a much shorter time than we can think. But by then it will be too late. So this is the current situation, and Didi, if you give me permission, I will move forward then with the other aspects of this crisis regarding the identity politics and the root causes, the separate Christian nation, which Sheikh Hasina talked about. So should I continue there?
Yeah. So, in continuation of what you were saying, the community, the main community who instigated this violence in the first place, if we look at the history of Manipur and the history of the Northeast per se, we will be able to clearly understand that wherever these Chin cookies have settled, destruction has followed. This holds true about not just Manipur, about Assam, about Tripura, about Mizoram, everywhere, the entire Northeast. So this is a pattern of violence. Wherever the Chin cookies have settled, this is a pattern of violence that the Northeast is already familiar with, but perhaps it is quite new to the rest of Bharat. Vladimir was talking about the Naga cookie conflict of 1992-1993, a dark chapter in the history of modern day Manipur. The Nagas at that time, they were inhabiting large parts of the hill districts of Ukrul, Senapati, Churachandpur as well, Tamenglong and Chandel. The cookies at that time, they were settled in the eastern and southern parts of Chandel district. And besides a few scattered settlements in entire Churachandpur district and pockets of district as well. With the eruption of the clashes between the Nagas and the Cookies, the upsurge in violence and political instability, of course, it led to the loss of many innocent lives. Houses were burned, villages were uprooted mercilessly. Thousands of Nagas were displaced, especially from the sensitive border town of More, and many Nagas were killed in broad daylight by the terrorists. The impact was felt in the impact of this violence was felt in nearby Nagaland as well. The Cookies even went to the extent of applying terror tactics to cow down the administration and occupy lands and property. If we see historically as well, Professor Gangume Kame has done detailed research on this, that how the Cookies had always challenged and stood in the way of the political aspirations of the Nagas. If 1,000 of either Tangpul Nagas or Kabui Nagas in Manipur were killed, there would be a vacuum. And they understood this very well. But if 1,000 cookies got killed, that would be filled in by the large-scale illegal immigration from outside of Manipur. So it was towards the late 1980s and the early 1990s that the attacks of these cookies began. They started attacking Naga settlements in the hills of Manipur, and their aim was to force these indigenous Nagas out of their lands. I would say that the Nagas they would perhaps have allowed the cookies to settle and live, provided these cookies recognized Naga ownership over vast swaths of the hills of Manipur, which had been traditionally Naga areas. But the cookies wanted to claim these lands of the Nagas as their own. That was the root of the problem. Their objective, the objective of the cookie organizations was, and it remains so till this day, was to carve out a separate administration from a major part of the hill districts of Manipur in the name of Zalingam or Kuki land. So, you see, many Kuki-dominated areas in present-day Churachandpur district and several other areas of Manipur, these areas were formed, where earlier the original habitations of the Zeliangrong Nagas, especially the Rommi Nagas. But today, as of now, at present, there is hardly any Naga population left in today's Churachandpur. So, and indisputable fact here is that in the Naga Kuki conflict of the 1990s is that the nomadic cookies have always been the aggressors, and the indigenous Nagas only reacted to protect their homes and lands, which is inseparable from their identity, from their way of life, from their culture and civilization. And within a few months of the beginning of the Naga Kuki clashes in May 1992 in More, the tension was palpable. The number of attacks increased cases of killings, abductions, torture, mysterious disappearances of Naga men, and violence against Naga women and Naga girls were almost regularly heard. There was one such incident where the cookies had molested and gang raped 4 Naga women and kidnapped 12 Naga men, out of which 4 could never be traced. And later, the badly mutilated body of one Naga man from the Maring Naga community was found at a cemetery in More town. But armed Kuki militants did not allow his family to take away the body. The border town of More was the most affected of all as a result of this violence. And most of these killings and violence took place along the NH2, the Imphal-Dimapur stretch of the National Highway 2, which was then known as the NH39, if I'm not wrong. And various militant organizations such as KNO, Kuki National Organization, KDF, Kuki Defense Force, KNF, Kuki National Front, Kuki National Army, KNA, all these organizations, they came together, they sent out threatening letters to the Nagas of More and other Naga villages in Chandel district, the Tangkul Nagas of southeast Ukhrul, and also those Nagas were residing in Senapati district to leave their residences immediately or face dire consequences. So when the Nagas of More and other places, when they could no longer withstand the atrocities of the cookies, hundreds of Naga men, women, and children fled More and other Naga inhabited villages of Chandel by August 1992. This was a major exodus of the Nagas, and after this exodus of the Nagas, especially from More town became the cradle of Kuki militancy in Manipur over a period of time. And today, at present, the town is home. It is home to top Kuki commanders and militant leaders. If we go there, we can see for ourselves clearly how their houses, surrounded by high walls, are topped with barbed wire. And despite several memoranda that was being submitted to the then Congress Chief Minister of Manipur, Rajkumar Dorenga, saying no effective action was taken to stop this genocide of the Nagas committed by the Cookies. In fact, Dorinda Singh's government could could just do nothing to trace the missing Nagas and also provide help and support to their families. So there have been many such conflicts in especially in More. Before coming to the other states, I would like to describe about the next bloody conflict that was again centered around in More, the Tamil Kuki conflict of 1995. And if you see most of these conflicts, they have a common pattern because more often than not, they have been centered in the border districts and the border towns of Manipur, such as Churachandpur and More. More is the gateway to Southeast Asian nations via Myanmar. In fact, More, I would like to mention here, More was one of the most peaceful Indian border towns till at least the early 1990s, and it houses a significant population of Tamils uh, who have who have lived in the Northeast for nearly half a century, beginning from the 1960s onwards, when the first Tamil settlements came up in More. And prior to the arrival of these Tamils, many Hindus had already settled in More. They already had their residences in More. And it was only after the 1960s when trade began that more and more people from diverse cultural and religious backgrounds began coming into More. The Tamils of More, they are largely Hindus, and they have been living peacefully ever since. They are still rooted to their Tamil culture and traditions, although their numbers have been sharply decreasing over the years. But even today, the Tamils can still boast of being the largest number among all other ethnic non-Manipuri trading communities in More. Next to the Tamils, in terms of their control over trade, were the Marwaris and the Punjabis. But both their numbers have dwindled to a very, very small fraction of what it used to be till at least the early 1990s. And apart from these three communities, there are the Manipuri Muslims, the Bangals, and the Nepalis as well. There is also a significant, in fact, there was a significant population of Biharis as well who were once known for their control over the cereal and the grain trade, but their population has been receding in More over the past few decades. More was once known to be a much more cosmopolitan town than even the capital of Manipur, that is Imphal. It boasted of a beautiful multicultural diaspora. Deepavali was celebrated there among all the communities together. Pongal celebrations in More, they were they were as big and grand as in any other town of southern India. But as time passed, this lucrative border trading town, More, became a highly prized bone of contention. And by that time, the Tamils were a majority community in More. Their population was estimated to be roughly about 15,000, almost half of the town's population. They dominated various business sectors such as steel, textiles, ornaments, etc. And many families from other communities also, like the Sikhs, Orias, Telugus, Kannadigas, Malayalis, Bengalis, they also kept coming to More and settled down here in due course of time. But these people, they never laid any hegemonic claims upon the town as their own. And it was during this same period, the early 1990s, that talks were going on between the governments of India and Myanmar for legalizing cross-border trade. And More at that time was fast emerging as the main transit point for drug trafficking and smuggling of goods from Myanmar. Large-scale influx of illegal Chinki immigrants from Myanmar to More and the help and support extended to them by numerous Kuki militant outfits which were active in the region, made these people, the Chin Kukis, numerically strong in comparison to other communities who had been residing in More since several centuries. Okay, and gradually, as their numbers increased, the cookies began exerting themselves upon others, especially the Nagas and the Tamils, leading to extortion and various other acts of everyday vandalism. And today, at present, the cookies are the majority community in More. But besides immigration, another factor which we need to understand that contributed the declining numbers and declining influence of the Tamil population in More was the signing of a border trade agreement between India and Myanmar in 1994 and the subsequent legalization of cross-border trade between the two countries, which was done in 1995. Now, prior to the signing of this border trade agreement, only an illegal barter system existed between India and Myanmar. But after this border trade agreement was signed, a border trade market was set up by the government of Myanmar at a place called Nampalong near More, which is like you can say next to the no man's land between the two borders. And although it allowed free movement of people from both countries with valid documents, but a major change that came up with the establishment of this huge market complex at Nampalong was that cheap Chinese and Southeast Asian products made in countries like Thailand and Vietnam, ranging from clothes, cosmetics, footwear, utensils, foods, toys, etc., that earlier Indian traders used to sell inside Myanmar. So these cheap Chinese products now began to flood the shops of Nampalong market after this border trade agreement was signed, and immediately it changed the entire course of trade and commerce in the region. So the markets of Myanmar soon came to be dominated by these made in China goods. So India's bilateral trade with Myanmar naturally declined. The Burmese people, they started shopping in Nampalong rather than More. And Indian traders, especially the non-Manipuri population in More and the Tamil community in particular, who till that time controlled the Indo-Burmese trade, they were the most adversely affected. It was like now their businesses as if they suddenly suffered an unanticipated shock. And eventually, the lack of business opportunities for these people compelled many of them to leave the town. Many of them went back to Chennai. So in a sense, the Nampalong market took away control over the supply chains of goods from Burma that was till then completely in the hands of the Tamil businessmen and traders in More. And they cater to both retail and wholesale buyers of goods from further inland in India, and as well as goods that reached India via Burma. They all had their business networks intact in both the countries, in both India and Burma, which helped them to run their supply chain. But the coming up of the Nampalong market that sells almost everything one can name, it opened up a vast network of the Burmese business world to traders on the Indian side of the border. So instead of making their wholesale deals with businessmen in More, they could now make it directly with the suppliers in Burma. Also, various factors such as conflicts within Manipur, frequent bunds and economic blockades being called by insurgents. These factors were also quite responsible for crippling the supply chain of the traders within India. They faced constant threats from various insurgent organizations and businessmen as well who refused to pay the extortion money. And the ones who refused to pay extortion money, they were shot dead. Now, coming to the conflict, it was towards the latter half of the 1980s and the beginning of the 1990s that key militants imposed a tax on the Tamil traders of the area. And at that time, as I mentioned, the Tamils dominated almost 75% of the local border trade. The KSO, that is Cookie Students Organization, it declared that the town would remain closed on Sundays. And immediately after this declaration of the KSO, the Mighties raised their opposition. So it led to a cycle of frequent violence and standoffs between the Cookies and other communities in More. And it was around the same time when news reports of miscreants attacking Hindu temples on the Indian side of the Indo-Myanmar international border came to be frequently reported. So the multicultural social fabric of More was gradually beginning to disintegrate. Many non-Manipuri families, they either moved back to their native states or some of them also relocated to Imphal. And More was now left with only Meitei and Tamil colonies on the one hand and a completely separate Kuki township on the other. The Nagas had already left after the bloody Naga-Kuki clashes of 1992. Now, tension was already increasing between the Kukis and the Tamils when in April 1995, a Tamil businessman was kidnapped by Kuki militants for ransom. And this particular incident came as a big blow to the vibrant Tamil community in More, whose existence now was at risk. And they refused to pay the ransom. Since they refused to pay the ransom, the Kuki militants killed the businessman. And although the Manipur state government at that time, although efforts were made on its part to restore peace in the area, but this incident acted as a trigger in in uh, in arousing the anger and passions of the Tamil community. They immediately organized a rally to protest against the murder, and the Kukis attacked the Tamils during the rally, resulting in deadly clashes between the communities. Many of them died, many others were injured for life. Tamil houses, their shops were looted and destroyed by murderous key mobs. They also attacked and defiled a few old Tamil temples in the area. They also stormed the Tamil dominated localities in More and set on fire all their houses. So, uh, not just these clashes not just led to a loss of lives, but they also set off a major reverse migration. That is the exodus of the Tamil Hindus from More to other safer locations, either in Imphal or in other parts of the country. So I'll now come to Assam and the history of conflicts of these Kukis with various other tribes in the state. Uh, the most infamous among these conflicts in Assam are the ones that involve the Karbi tribe vis-a-vis the Kukis on the one hand, and the Masa tribe vis-a-vis the Kukis on the other. Let's first begin with the Karbi conflict. The Kukis had so Karbi Anglong. This conflict was centered in Karbi Anglong, which is the largest district of Assam. Earlier, it was known as Mikir Hills or Mikir Pahar, as we call it. So the Kukis had started migrating into Assam's largest district of Karbi Anglong approximately in the 1930s, and conflicts began after that between the Kukis and the indigenous Karbi people of the district. And the frequency of these conflicts increased from the 1980s onwards, when tension was already brewing between the Nagas and the Kukis in neighboring Manipur. The situation became very ugly from 1999 onwards, when the Kukis from neighboring Nagaland and Manipur, they began demanding political autonomy. In Karbi Anglong, we need to understand this important fact. In Karbi Anglong, the Kukis were mainly concentrated in this region, in a forested region, which is known as Singhakhon Pahar. In Assamese, we call it Singhakhon Pahar, Singhakhon Hills. It is a small mountainous region in the Difu subdivision of Karbi Anglong, and also borders the world famous Kaziranga National Park. And this forested area, Singhakhon Pahar, it is famous. It is well known for the production of high quality ginger. And Kukis have established complete control over this ginger business, over this ginger trade. And geographically, if we see the land area in Karbi Anglong district, the hilly district of Assam, the land area is very large, and the population of the different tribes is relatively small. So the economic space remains narrow, and conflicts begin, when communities have to compete within this narrow space, not just among themselves, but also with migrants. So the tribes, they look for exclusive political space with enough power to fulfill their aspirations. The Cookies were organizing themselves into a political entity towards the late 1980s and the 1990s to give it the appearance of a hill council. And the predominant political party in Karbi Anglong at that time was the ASDC, that is the Autonomous State Demand Committee, which was originally known as the PDF, the People's Democratic Front. It was set up as a mass organization of CPIML with the aim of a separate statehood for Karbi Anglong, and it had agreed to the formation of the Hill Council of the Cookies. And as a result of this decision, the Kuki Revolutionary Army, KRA, which is a Manipur-based Kuki militant outfit, it began to gradually expand its scope of activities. It began demanding taxes from the Karbi residents of the area. So, emboldened by the support of the KRA, the Kuki Revolutionary Army, a section of the Kukis now raised the demand for the integration of the Kuki inhabited areas of Karbi Anglong, integrating these areas with the Kuki inhabited areas of Manipur, so that they can fulfill their dream of the establishment of their imaginary Kuki land. And this brought the Kukis into direct conflict with the Karbis. The Karbis also had their own militant outfits. The erstwhile UPDS, that was the United People's Democratic Solidarity, which was one of the most dreaded among all. And the Karbi militant outfits, including the UPDS, vehemently disputed the KRA's projection of the Kuki population at more than 35,000 at that time in the Singhapan Pahar. And they claimed that, the Karbis claimed that it was a tacit move which was adopted by the KRA to justify the Kukis' demand for an autonomous council or a separate administrative setup. And accordingly, the KRA was branded by the Karbis as an organization of outsiders. The KRA, it was the KRA that initially instigated the violence under the code name Operation Volcano. The objective was to protect all the non-Karbis specifically meaning Kukis residing in Karbi Anglong and Karbi villages, primarily in the Singhapan Pahar. These villages were attacked in the dead end of the night, and many Karbi youths were kidnapped. But the Kukis alleged that their youth had been kidnapped by the Karbi youth. So it led to a cycle of death and violence. Several houses in different villages of Singhapan Pahar were torched by Kuki militants towards October, November 2003. And the Karbi militants too, they also retaliated with the kidnapping and killing of Kuki students from schools and torching of several Kuki houses were torched in different villages of Karbi Anglong. The KRA, the Kuki Revolutionary Army, it had accused the Karbi community of trying to chase out the Kukis from Karbi Anglong by claiming that the Karbis are jealous of the members of the Kuki community, for they have been able to establish their control over the lucrative ginger business in a district where vast areas of land cannot be cultivated, where vast areas of land are uncultivable. And it is certainly true that the Kukis have prospered economically as successful ginger cultivators in the Singhapan Hills. But Karbi organizations, on the other hand, they were of the opinion that the Kukis are a nomadic community. They are in a relentless pursuit of land for shifting cultivation, and therefore they posed a serious threat to the indigenous Karbis of the district by encroaching upon the ancestral lands and livelihoods of the Karbis, and therefore they had to be thrown out of Karbi Anglong. They had no place in Karbi Anglong. And these Karbi organizations, they also accused the Kukis of importing the gun culture to the peaceful hills of Karbi Anglong. And it was towards the fag end of the 1990s that the cookies boasted of a highly profitable market for their ginger business in Manipur. The conflict was becoming uglier day by day, especially after the killings of 37 Hindu Karbis on towards the I think it was 24th or 25th of March 2004 by the Kuki Revolutionary Army. 37 Hindu Karbis were killed at three separate places in Karbi Anglong district in a single day. And this was one of the worst massacres in the Karbi Kuki conflict, which led to a sustained campaign by the Kukis to cleanse this entire region of Karbi Anglong of all Karbi presence. And it was later reported that, as per the data that I have in hand, that over 30,000 Khasi people, Khasis, were residing in several areas of Karbi Anglong at that time bordering Meghalaya. They had fled the district towards Meghalaya's Jaintia Hills in the immediate aftermath of the clashes. Now, after the Karbi conflict in Assam, there was another deadly conflict between the Hindu Dimasa community of Assam and the Christian Mars. Now, who are these Mars? Okay, so the time period of this conflict was around the same time as the Karbi conflict in 2003, 2004. Now, who are these Mars? The Mars are, they are also a Christian tribe who belong to the same Chin, Kuki, Zomi, Mizo ethnic stock of tribes. And they are spread over Manipur, Mizoram, and also there is a significant population of Mars in several pockets of southern Assam's NC Hills district, which is an extremely sensitive and sparsely populated district, NC Hills district, and it is now known as Dima Hasao district. Control over the NC Hills district is extremely important for militant organizations in the Northeast because of its location, because of the location of the district. The NC Hills district, or Dima Hasao, as it is currently known, it provides an entry route to Nagaland, to Manipur, Mizoram, and Meghalaya. Apart from Kachar and Karbi Anglong districts of Assam. Also, the NC Hills district, it is the traditional homeland of the Dimasa community. The Dimasa community once ruled over large parts of Assam and the plain areas of present-day Nagaland. Now, what is important to note here is that besides the Karbis, the Dimasas are one of the few tribal groups in the Northeast who have still preserved their traditional belief systems from Christian proselytization, from the attempts of the Christian missionaries to proselytize them. From the demographic point of view, the Dimasas are the largest tribe in the NC Hills, comprising around 1/3 of the total population, and they are followed by the Semi Nagas and the Mars, the Christian Mars. But what we need to understand here is that these Mars, they were never the original inhabitants of the NC Hills district. Because if we see the census records of 1901, 1911, 1921, 1931, there were no Mars in the NC Hills. Their own historical records, of the Mars say that they first entered India through Manipur. And in Manipur, even till this day, they are infamous for causing all kinds of trouble. Their influx to the NC Hills began in 1 and 2 numbers during the pre-independence period because the British government played an important role in settling these Mars in the present day region of the NC Hills to counter the Hindu Nagas, the Hindu Zeliangrong Nagas, especially the Zemi Nagas. But over a period of time, mainly facilitated by political factors and the lure of land and other economic benefits, it was after 1947 that the Mars, they expanded their footprint from Manipur to Mizoram and Assam, particularly the NC Hills and Kachar districts. And until 1951, the Mars, they find no mention. There is no mention of any Mar person in the census of the NC Hills till 1951. It was after the formation of the NC Hills District Council in 1951 that the population of the Mars was recorded to be around 1145 persons. Okay, so till 1951, there was no mention of any Mar in the census of the NC Hills. It was after the formation of the NC Hills District Council that their population was this much, 1145. So, so it was a drastic increase. There was a sudden increase of the Mar population in the NC Hills, especially in certain areas like in Mahur and Maibong subdivisions. There is another village, Harangajao village in Haflong subdivision. So in these areas, their population has started to gradually increase, beginning from the early 1960s onwards, and it had increased exponentially by the late 1960s. Many new Mar villages had come up in different subdivisions of the NC Hills. So a deadly conflict was already becoming inevitable. Now, if we see the census reports from 1955 to 1966, 1955 to 1996, we can observe a more than 600% growth rate in the population of the Mars in the NC Hills, much more than the Dimasa population during the same period. And due to continuous influx from Manipur, their population in the NC Hills registered a sharp increase. In fact, the Mars became the third largest population category in the district towards the late 1990s. And this was an abnormal increase. And this abnormal increase in the population of the Mars, it was certainly not because of biological factors. It was a well-conceived strategy. Everything was pre-planned because the Mars had already enlisted their names in the Mar Village Council, and then they began shifting to the new establishments in NC Hills that had come up. This was done to avoid detection of their migration from Manipur and various other places. They had and still have an endless hunger for land, and therefore these Mars are known to have a history of causing trouble wherever they were allowed to settle. Even in Mizoram, they have caused trouble to such an extent that they did not settle for anything less than a separate hill development council for them. The government of Assam, during the tenure of, I think, former Chief Minister of the Congress Party, Hiteshwar Saikia, the then Assam government under Hiteshwar Saikia had granted the Mars a development council in Kachar district. But despite such pampering, the Mars killed and massacred those same people, Hindu Dimasas in particular, who let them reside in their territory in the first place. And like their Kuki brothers in neighboring Karbi Anglong, the Mars, despite being recent settlers in the NC Hills district, as I have already explained, they began to assert themselves over the Hindu Dimasas both socially and politically since the late 1990s. And since then, this region has been plagued by unprecedented violence. The Mars demanded that the areas they inhabit, the areas inhabited by them to the NC Hills, will have to be integrated in their imaginary Kuki land. And simultaneously, they also began an aggressive proselytization drive to convert the Hindu Dimasas into Christianity. And of course, thanks largely to the pre-independence policies of the British Raj and the minority appeasing post-independent Indian secular state, the NC Hills district, the strategically located NC Hills district, has been a very easy bet for the Christian missionaries to accomplish their mission of Christianizing Assam. And it owes its origin to the missionary vision of establishing, they want to establish a Christian corridor in northern and southern Assam. And in this, they are aided by foreign Christian missionaries. So these Mars, they began a paid expansion spree in the entire region encompassing the NC Hills district. There was a Mar missionary and theological scholar whose name was Rochunga Pudaite from America, who is said to have begun a mass propaganda and fundraising campaign among Christians worldwide, especially in America, highlighting the cause of the Mars and seeking for donations for these Mar people. And all of this was based on concocted facts, but it found a very good response in the US. the ground was already made fertile for the genocide, for the ethnic cleansing of the Hindu Dimasas from their own native lands. There was another organization, US-based organization, which was involved in this mission, and it was called the it is known as the Indo-Burma Pioneering Mission, which sponsored a partnership mission society located in Manipur's Churachandpur. And this mission had close fraternal ties with that theological scholar of the Mars, Rochunga Pudaite. Tensions began when a Mizoram-based Christian militant outfit, Mar People's Convention, a Democratic HPCD in short, when cadres of this militant outfit began infiltrating into the NC Hills towards the late 1980s and the beginning of the 1990s. The same period when the population of the Mars in the district saw a drastic rise, and the objective of this militant organization of the Mar People's Convention, was to begin an underground movement to press home, to raise its demand for carving out a separate state for the Mars within the Union of India, comprising of the several Mar-dominated areas in Mizoram, Manipur, Kachar, and the NC Hills district in Assam. They began attacking Hindu Dimasa settlements in 2002, leading to a bloody war. Assam's NC Hills district, as I have already mentioned, it provides a short, one of the shortest corridors joining Nagaland and the Manipur Hills adjacent to Myanmar with that of Bangladesh. So it was from the NC Hills that militants would easily sneak into Bangladesh via the Barak Valley and Meghalaya as well. So, to implement its hegemony in the NC Hills, the Naga militant organization NSCN was already active, and it was patronizing the Hindu Dimasas through large-scale investments in terms of education, in terms of healthcare. And this was done mainly with the hope of converting the Hindu Dimasas into Christianity. But the Dimasas proved equally stubborn and obstinate by steadfastly holding on to their dharmic traditions and rituals. In fact, at that time, the Hindu zone of the NC Hills, dominated by the Dimasas, it stood as a major barrier in carving out that proposed Christian corridor of the Christian militant organizations. So the Dimasas became the prime targets of the church. The Mar People's Convention, that is the HPC, and various other militant organizations, they instilled mortal fear amongst the Hindu Dimasas to either you convert or you die. So their aim was to facilitate a mass exodus of the Dimasas from the NC Hills to neighboring regions so that they can be reduced in terms of demography in their own homeland. The Dimasas, they were made to feel increasingly isolated in their own native lands, and the nefarious activities of these Christian missionaries and their terrorist organizations assumed it was becoming disastrous every passing day, which threatened the life and security of the Dimasas in quite a similar manner as that of the Hindu Karbis in 2003, 2004. So, I mean, can we still deny or overlook the angle of church conspiracy in these conflicts in the Northeast? Certainly we cannot. The fact that, the church manufactures divisive forces in the Northeast, this fact can certainly not be ignored or overlooked from the perspective of national security. Of course, it might not alone be the factor. The religious angle might not alone be the factor in the current conflict in Manipur, considering there is a layer of various factors from the drug economy to illegal immigration. But the religious angle in these conflicts certainly cannot be ignored. That's my main point. And even during the Mar-Dimasa conflict in the NC Hills, the clashes began when a group of Christian Mars attacked a Shiva temple at a place called Harangachau, and they threw away a bell hanging inside the temple. There is a sacred place of the Hindu Dimasas. It's a sacred village, Semkhor. There were several attacks on this village, and this restive atmosphere boiled over in the next couple of months, culminating that culminated into one of the worst clashes in the history of post-independent India. And Christian missionary organizations from across the world came out in support of the Mars uh, for blocking the growing socio-political clout of the Dimasas, who were 99% Hindus at that time. There was one America-based Kuki International Forum who even went to the extent of, I remember, writing an open letter to the then Chief Minister of Assam, Torun Gogoi, accusing the Assam state government for being biased and partial in its handling of the conflict since the very beginning. So I think that's all I have to say. And I mean, there were so many other communities, the Dimasas, Zemi Nagas, Rangpols, Biates, etc., who were coexisting peacefully for hundreds of years before these cookies migrated. So the basic human values of sharing and peaceful coexistence has never been a trait of the cookies and the Mars in particular.
Why we went into so much details? Let us understand the attitude which a government takes. We should not consider government as a person. It should be considered as an entity which is taking care of our borders, our integrity, and our demography. Now, political integrity or territorial integrity and demographic integrity are not the same thing. So there has been a blatant weakness in our system to be able to protect against demographic invasions. Now, like this Mar and other things, there were horrible clashes in Tripura, horrible clashes in Mizoram, horrible clashes in Bangladesh. In fact, these Kuki-Chin Mizo language speakers, they were involved in the 1971 war against Bharat. They fought the Indian Army for East Pakistan. So these kind of, even in Bangladesh, there has been horrible separatist activities. They have deep links with Islamic groups like Al-Qaeda and Jamatul Ansar, these kind of groups. This Islamo-Christian nexus we can see all over the Northeast, from Meghalaya, like creating the like Islamization of Police Bazaar and glass mosque creation just near the garrison ground of the armed forces to block it. We can see this throughout this matter. So now why we are going into this? The current strategy of creating a buffer zone and trying to bring peace through dialogue, this has never worked with them, because these Kuki-Chin Mizo language speakers, they had been involved in at least 10 mass murders, major attacks on non-Christian people, and their victims easily exceed more than 150,000. If so, this is something which we have to consider. The horrible mass rapes, murders, killings, genocides of Riyangs, the Brus, the Chakmas by the Mizos, the role of the state in actually ensuring that their names are deleted from electoral rolls, the destruction of the Mahadev temple at Shibrai Khong or Subrais Khong, as they tell it, that thing. And then when it was attempted to be rebuilt, and the renaming of the structure, when it was attempted to be rebuilt, the Mizoram state itself objected for a religious thing to be done in Tripura. So this is the amount of xenophobia and other things. The Brus and Riyangs, when they were asked whether you want to return, they told we'll starve to death. And they suffered for 30 years since 1997. Nobody, 27 years nearly. Nobody took care of them, nothing. Like their tragedy and griefs are unbelievable. And
in fact,
40,000 such Brus. Yeah.
Yeah, just one point I would like to make, since you are talking about Mizoram, not just Riyangs, many other Hindu communities like Gorkhas, Marwaris, Bengalis, who have been engaged in different kinds of business activities or employed in the administration for several decades, they have been continuously facing a curtailment of their rights, especially with regard to property ownership. Their freedom to carry on their businesses has been restricted in Christian majority Mizoram so many different ways, like reducing the quotas of their trade licenses and by restricting them from bidding for government contracts. So yeah, please continue.
Thank you. So in this matter, when we go into this, we see at least there were 35 to 40,000 Bru people who were displaced. And even 30, 40 years later, Brus, Riyangs, Chakmas, The cookies have not let them go. The Kuki Chin Mizo language speakers. They are after complete annihilation. Even displacement of people is not enough for them. The problem here is it's not just about land grabbing. Like in Manipur, we are seeing they are totally reduced 1150 temples to dust, Sanamai temples, between May 3rd and May 5th. The reports later found 396 more major temples and religious sites desecrated, 50 more the holiest sites like Kobru Thanjing. They sent memorandums to be de-recognized, which were even considered holy by the Nagas. So this is basically a, an attempt to wipe out the entire history and existence of of multiple native people. So as long as they exist, there is a problem. So this kind of a problem, can it really be solved by creating buffer zones and treating both parties as equal? This is the question which the mainstream media is not raising. And even the leftist media is doing its job covering it. But the counter media, non-leftist, although I do not like to use these political terms, but let's for convenience put it, the non-leftist media has not been covering this issue at all. They have left the Hindus of our farthest to east part region, the last remaining Hindus, a 5,000-year-old civilization, to fend for themselves against a deadly global ecosystem or a mafia. Now, coming into these things, Chakmas, more than 35,000 victims. So here only we have counted your 1,50,000 without even going into Manipur things. So this much blood they have in their hands. And horrible atrocities were committed, which would remind you of middle-aged Islamic barbarisms, which is no way inferior to that. All kinds of things you can imagine were done, and they invented a few crimes of their own. So let's keep it at that way. Now, coming into this issue, I would like to go into the major root cause of it. It is repeatedly told about the separate administration of a cookie demand. What is the separate administration? The separate administration or administration experiments in Northeast Bharat was started by T.H. Perry, a British administrator, as early as 1873. And the so-called Kuki Chin Mizo language speakers, they are very prominent victims of this British imperialism and church control. Because why the cookies? You might ask, there are so many more Christian communities. The Nagas are there. Why the Nagas are not being used as a tool like this? Because the Kuki society is a very top-heavy society, with their village chiefs having king-like power, which will need a future episode. This is a huge issue, village chief and those things. But it is a top-heavy society, and it's very easy to control by controlling a few people at the top. And also, their nomadic lifestyle had taken a major hit after formation of the international border. So the jhum cultivation and lack of development of agricultural methods have made their productivity fall off steeply, and the land fertility has also gone down. So that also facilitated external forces and agents to easily control the population. Third thing, when we come into this, whenever we come into this, let us come into the identity formation. I have been using the term Kuki Chin Mizo language speakers. What does this mean? The root cause of this thing is that whenever the missionaries came to the Northeast, they found that it is extremely difficult to proselytize because the language changes every 5 kilometers. It may even change from village to village. They found that. So what they did, they started creating umbrella languages, languages which are common for a lot of communities, and they tried to popularize the use of that. And they also started creating scripts. Initially, these were created to facilitate communication. But then these were used for proselytization, and then they found a new deadly use for it. They found that, say, there are 50 languages of the South Central Tibeto-Burman language group. These 50 languages, they found it is extremely easy and extremely convenient to group different groups of similar languages. Say you group 20 languages and you give it an identity or a name A. You group 30 languages and you give it an identity B. You group 50, all 50, and you give it an identity C. So that is how they created different terms. Kuki, Chin Kuki, Kuki Chin Mizo. What does this mean? So Kuki means a set of clans, which officially, according to them, 30 clans, which they claimed in 1987 were part of their community. This was a memorandum sent to Rajiv Gandhi. Now, ironically, these identity politics, the cookies have been notorious for torturing and forcing and wiping out the language and culture of other independent Janajatis like Aimol, Kom, MC Mary Kom, the six-time world champion and Olympic medalist. She is from the Kom community. Even from her village, churches were used to fire mortar shells into children's schools. Horrible incidents. So she, these kind of things, they did. And these communities have also been actively resisting this. There has been repeated attempts to include more communities into this. And the Mizo chain cookie, this common identity creation, is a construct of the church and the foreign countries. There is no nationalistic feeling behind it. The Mizo Union first defined 47 Janajatis as Mizos in 1947 in their memorandum to the Bordoloi Commission. But the problem which came was that the 47 Janajatis which were considered as Mizo and the 30 Janajatis which were considered as Kuki had many common Janajatis. And even many Janajatis among Mizo, like the Lai, and many Janajatis are considered as Kuki, like the Aimol. Even among this conflict, they want to retain their independent identity. They want to retain their culture and language. So this has led to severe clashes and conflicting ideas. Now, the church actually wanted to create a Christian nation, which Sheikh Hasina was telling, the Christianistan in our East. Now, you have also seen Anthony Blinken and other politicians and the European Parliament giving them huge support. Why is that? Because this Christianistan in our East serves a lot of purposes. If we see the claimed land which they are claiming, it takes away the warm water port from Bangladesh, Chattogram, the major warm water port there. It takes away the hills of Burma, which is a major access route there. It takes away the parts of Manipur, Mizoram, Tripura, and Assam from Bharat, which forms the gateway of our Act East policy, basically providing us access to Southeast Asia. This country, Christianistan, which is a church controlled thing, would allow the Western countries like US, UK, Canada, and the European Union to run their geopolitics and keep both India and China closely at check. China has been trying to build an access system where they will be able to access both the Pacific Ocean as well as the Indian Ocean. So it's like a California, both sides they can have ocean access. So this such a Christian nation would also allow them to disrupt such efforts. So there is huge geopolitical gains for this, and no matter what the cookies does, even if they wipe out entire native population, they will continuously receive international support shamelessly. Because let us not forget, the Americans allowed the 1971 incident to happen and supported the militarily, supported the East Pakistan militarily. So same thing will happen. Now the question is, will the Bharatiya government show the spine to stand up to it? So far, unfortunately, it's not. It's not happened, especially the central government. Regarding the Jiribam crisis, I will come to it later. Now coming back to this thing, whenever these identity politics were being created, they decided, the Kukichin Mizo language speakers, that we need a common identity to create this. How do we do that? They found out that names of ethnic groups will not work. So they started using the term Zau or Zomi. Zomi or Zau means Highland people or Highlander, roughly. So these identities started to be popularized around from 1953, according to their own thing, from Burma. 1983, the first major convention was held in Burma, which started popularizing this term. And from 2000, this term started being used in major sense, and political parties like Zoramthar across Mizoram, as well as Kuki politicians, Manipur, they started promoting this identity that the Janajati, the centuries old, millennia old Janajati identities have no relevance or existence. It is just this one term, one people. Now, this Christianistan, what is the problem? If I am not going into whether this is true or false, even if this is true, the problem is there is not a single ounce of nationalistic fervor in this thing. It's not a nationalistic thing. This thing is exclusively built to have a state sponsored persecution of non Christians. Same thing happened in Meghalaya. When Meghalaya, the church managed to break off large portions of Christian dominant areas from the state of Assam, we saw four mass murders: 1979, 1987, 1990, 1992. Same thing happened in Mizoram. When Mizoram was broken away after the Mizo Peace Accord, we saw horrendous massacre of people, which the state basically we cannot use the term state sponsored for practical reasons and other reasons of cosmetic things, but it is as close to it as possible. There were instances of Williamson A. Sangma and other people removing security forces to facilitate the exodus of Hindus from Shillong. There are in 1987, there are instances of Hindu victims being forced to stay in graveyards as relief camps under horrible conditions. So these kind of things has been there. So what is their problem? Their problem is, first thing, why should other people exist with us? Why their religious sites should exist in land claimed by us? Why their religious beliefs are being allowed to be practiced here? This thing comes up in every single ideological scholar there. The separatist idea of Kuki, to demand a separate Kuki state, that started from 1960. And the demand, when they sent a memorandum to Shri Jawaharlal Nehru. Then came the 1988 demand for a separate Kuki country, or a Zalinga, in 1988 by P.S. Haukim. And since then, there has been repeated calls for war in the name of Christ, separate Kuki country. It is called as Zalingam, it is sometimes called as Zoland, it is sometimes called as Zogam, based upon Kuki Zogam now, based upon what identity politics they are wanting to project into the minds of people. So the problem is that, in spite of lack of facts, due to the help of the extensive leftist media and foreign support, the Kukis have been able to project themselves as victims very well. With 2 or 3 victims' testimonies, they have just simply projected the victim image. Now the problem is that the Maitis and other people have tried to counter this as facts. But the victimhood, or the terrifying, horrible sufferings of these people, of these 1 lakh lakhs of victims before this violence, this is the third attack on the Maitis. 2007, 2015, there were horrible attacks on them. The 2007 attack was done because a woman stood up to Kuki militants who were forcibly taking things from a shop for free. That was not good enough. There was no political reason. Just simple bullying. In fact, in More, the Kukis were the one who established a regimented tax system. Before that, tax was more like sporadic or random. They set up a regimented extortion system. Kuki atrocities over Gorkhas, over other communities, forced the formalization. The Chamber of Commerce was formally there between 1980, but the formalized Chamber of Commerce for protecting people, that came around the late 2000 or late 90s under Shekharna, headed by. And he also faced a lot of issues from Kuki groups like KNA and KNF, which controlled both sides of the highway. Every single vehicle which goes in or went out of More were taxed. And also, there were horrible instances of families being forced into nefarious activities and also to sustain themselves. And there were more kinds of instances of, as their population increased, there were more instances of creating an economically unviable situation for non-Kukichin Mizo language speakers in More, so that they can be driven out from there. This thing has been a well-calibrated and well-calculated thing going in for decades. Now it is even Bharatiya government is now being forced to put a large portion of supplies to the security forces in More by air. Why? Because from 2016, these abandoned Naga lands, like Ankita ji was telling, Howlenphai, Minao, Molcha, Sahi, Lianphai, along the PMGSY roads, all around this More region, they were flooded with combat veterans. Not just illegal immigrants, they were flooded with combat veterans. And these combat veterans, once they came in and they took in the full potential of this region, that here we are here, all of these, hundreds of villages they were capable to do. They had been ambushing security forces, they had been murdering security personnel. But since May 27, when they attacked Imphal Valley from 3 directions and the security forces responded very well, killing 40 Kuki terrorists. 13 of our security personnel has been killed, and except the case of Anand Chingtham, who was shot by Philips K. Khongsai, a former Assam Rifles veteran, and Hemkholal Met, the treasurer of the local BJP party. from the Baptist church. Uh, After that, there was some operations. They arrested these two, and the forces who went to go there to check the Sioux camps were ambushed. There were no cadres present in the suspension of operation camps. So horrible, except that none of the deaths and wounding and the dozens of 13 deaths of central security forces and dozens of state security forces wounded and killed, none of these have been avenged. No complete operations have been done. The attack on Jiribam, the government, there are official documents warning movement of 200 groups, 200 terrorists, big groups. Right in January itself, no action was taken. In June, right now, just few days ago, there were reports of 45 terrorists moving. Nothing. Terrorists like SK Thadou, they were allowed to stay in their home even after, with their armed consorts, even after there were firing from that village towards the native Meitei Bengali Vishnupriya population. And these people, the non-ethnic people who were staying there, they were for the one being forced by the central government security officials to move. Barbed wires were placed to make their movement difficult. Now the problem with that which I have, Jiribam now it has gone up to 2,700, the total number of displaced people. The problem which I have with that is that we have seen with Kashmir, once the people have been displaced, it is very difficult to get them back in this secular system, and the more number of people that are displaced and away from this region, the longer they stay away from it, it becomes harder to bring them back. So these kind of attitudes, it is not correct, and this is creating the monkey balancing. I wanted to address this thing, that the monkey balancing of calling the Kukis and Maitis as an equal stand is dangerous. Yes, both had insurgencies, but the Maiti insurgency, every single insurgency was done with one goal: protecting the territorial integrity. That is much easier to address than this, which insurgency is running to address the vested interests of maybe 20, 30 Western countries. So satisfying these things is much more difficult and tougher, and it needs stern action against them. And coming back to this point, whenever this identity politics was developed, Kuki, Chin, Mizo as one group, this demand for a Zalenga, the exclusivist Christian nation, this also places very clearly what they want. They term it as a Lebensraum to unite all Kuki, Chin, Mizo language speakers. Let us not go into semantics, but still it makes it very clear that the basic human rights and basic dignity of the large portions of non-Christian and non-Kuki Chin Mizo, there are two angles, ethnic and religious. Both of them shall not be satisfied. And the church would have a wonderful time there. Why? Because they will have a free hand to drive or convert the non-Christian people out from there. And with that, they will have more political power, more control, more financing. Now, I would like to close my talk with one point. There has been a lot of talk about government action, but we should not blindly blame the government, because the government is also seeing this through a lens of multiple other agreements. Sheikh Hasina talk, we all saw the cookies, but we didn't recognize that America is also in their attempt to secularize countries like America and UK. They're also financing near dormant terrorist groups like ULFA. It was categorically mentioned that they are also financing ULFA. So we have to understand that Bharatiya government has agreements, hundreds of agreements going on, most of which we are not privy of, ordinary people. So there might be understandable why they are not suspending an agreement immediately. But what is not understandable is why foreign terrorists are holding our territory to ransom, posing a huge geopolitical threat, and why Indian nationals and indigenous people are being driven out and being forced to starve and survive under horrible conditions without any compensation. This is one question which everybody has to address beyond political issues, irrespective of political lines. Now, coming back to geopolitics, it is being told a lot of time that geopolitics is playing a major role. Well, we cannot give a clean sheet here. The Burmese civil war, which started in 2021, after that around 85,000, 90,000 now with the 5,001, at least 90,000 illegal immigrants have entered Manipur, India from Myanmar. And thanks to the failed policies, previously there were much bigger displacements, but the percentage of people moving to Bharat were much small. But now Bharat is the number one destination for all the illegal immigrants from Burma. So this situation, the Burmese civil war which is going on, this situation has created a very given two strong blackmailing chips to the cookies. One is our Kaladan project and Act East policy. The area through which it goes down, the Kaladan project is a project which gives us a alternative to the chicken neck of Shiliguri. To reach our northeast, it goes through Burma, Paletwa, and Mizoram. It gives us an alternative to our chicken neck. So this is a very important thing. And second is the Act East policy, which obviously opens up Southeast Asia. These areas are now controlled by the rebels. What is most dangerous is that this rebel coalition is not a naturally formed one. It is an artificially formed coalition consisting of various ethnic groups, Rohingyas, including other groups, which are which are very unlikely to prevail once the war is over. This won't prevail. Neither they will have any, and democracy and Western values which is being projected based on the record and horrible atrocities of these groups in the history which they have committed. Or most of these groups have long history of insurgencies. Based on their atrocities, that is just not true. So in these cases, it is very likely that these groups will will have a major impact on our policies, because Paletwa has fallen to the rebels, threatening our Kaladan project, and Sagaing region, through where the bordering region of More, of Burma, which borders More, that is also having a strong presence of these rebel forces. Now, what people are not telling is that in the middle of civil war, there is a huge conversion going on, industrial scale conversion by missionaries, and these missionaries are advertising these conversions, unlike everywhere else. It is almost as if they want people to know that we are converting so much, you support us, or we are fulfilling this task. That is what it appears. In social media, large number of such narratives of some pastors converting 7, converting 12, converting these, that is coming up. And a large number of Buddhist stupas and other Buddhist sites, they are being attacked. Hindus have also not been spared. Buthidaung, we also, 5,000, the horrible situation of people stuck there. So, although that is also not a pure religious thing, but this has given the cookies a solid blackmailing chip, since the rebel groups also contain chain cookies, to that they can use these things to blackmail the government based upon this, or tell that okay, we will counterbalance these chain cookies and secure your activist policy. We will fight with them. You give us our demand. So these kind of things has created a lot of mess. Now we would like to just say one thing. Is geopolitics worth the lives of 15 to 18 lakh people, the last Hindus of Northeast? Is it worth the destruction of a 5,000-year-old civilization? That is a call which the people have to take. Thank you.
Thank you, Ankita ji and Vladimir Adithya. It's actually like again very heart-wrenching story to hear actually what is happening over there, which is mostly not covered by any of the mainstream medias or any publications as such. Maybe a very few, which is not accessible to everybody. I'm not taking too much time. Vidya ji, after your comments, we can take questions.
No, it's just horrifying, absolutely horrifying. And I really wish that mainstream media will take this up in a big way so that people know what's actually happening. And I hope the central government will do something about it. I don't want to take up time, like Ravishankar ji said. I think we can go ahead with the questions. It's amazing talk, Ankita ji and Vladimir ji. We are indebted to you for this.
Rahul, we can open it up for questions. Adithya, go ahead. Adithya, can you unmute and ask the question?
Yeah. Namaste. Am I audible now?
Yes, you are.
Yes. So I have traveled extensively in Northeast India, and I'm also in touch with a lot of Bishnupriya and Manipuri as well as Maithai Manipuri people here in Mumbai. I'm from Maharashtra, and I have traveled there extensively in Northeast India. But my last visit to Manipur was several decades ago, so maybe I'm not up to date with the latest ground situation, but I'm aware about the ground situation. So I think all the points that you have discussed make up very rigorous academic and on the ground research. But unless and until we have political will, It will not come around through our secular system. And the long-term project is to do away with the secular nature of the system altogether, make it a Hindu state instead of a secular state. But my question therefore would be, when we still are not yet a Hindu state, when we still happen to be a secular state, including the one run by the BJP government, can we really do anything through the current system? That is my question.
Who are you addressing this to? I think Ankita ji, you will take it, Didi, or me? Who did you address
I would
this
like
question
an
to?
answer from Ankita ji, because she has, I mean, I know her name mentioned through some other sources also. So I would really like her to answer this question, but anyone else also may please. Thank you. I am muting
No,
myself.
sure.
Yeah,
Sure, Ankita.
yeah, sure. This is basically the problem that we are facing because the secular state and the Hindu state that you are talking about, and this has actually prevented the government from doing many things uh, which we need, which we require at this moment in Manipur, like carrying out an all-out military operation to flush out the militants in the hills, an all-out military operation in the hills of Manipur, which is still pending. And that I mean, because of this, this this one-sided, this flawed notion of secularism, the indigenous inhabitants of Manipur, I talked about the Nagas, they have already been reduced to a minority in their own homeland. And there has been an exponential growth in the hill areas of exponential growth of the key population in the hill areas of Manipur, and politically also the results. Uh, uh, the results can be seen. I mean, the number of unreserved uh, electoral constituencies, it may get reduced, whereas the number of reserved constituencies in the next delimitation in the dominated areas
Adithya, kindly mute. Adithya,
are
kindly mute.
expected to increase. Yeah. So
Adithya,
unless
mute
illegal,
yourself. Once she finishes, we can ask if there is anything. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah. So unless illegal immigration, if left unchecked, it is definitely going to affect the course of electoral politics, and how the secular state is going to deal with it. I mean, that's what we all are wondering.
I would like to add a couple of points here. The delimitation nature which it is, like Didi said, if illegal immigration happens, you will get more reserved seats. Now, we have to see this as a civilizational issue. This is not a clash. That is the biggest problem, that people are telling this is a clash. No, this is the final step of a 40-year long genocide process, which has already had well over 150,000 victims. This is just the final blow for a section, and which is largely successful. Just that the terrain and other things have stopped this from being a total success. Now, coming back to this point, whenever we are talking about illegal immigration and these things, we also have to understand what is the nature of cookie politicians. Thanks to the near absolute power of village chiefs, it is impossible to get honest politicians there. You can win campaigns in the election in these cookie dominated areas without going there a single time, without addressing a single people there, simply through the muscle power and of the cookie militants, as well as the, what to say, the uh, autocratic power of village chiefs who have sole ownership of land. So the politicians who come up will either be terrorists, illegal immigrants, drug dealers, or all three. Some examples: the 10 cookie MLAs of a Tathakatit Rashtravadi Party BJP who raised for separate administration. Every single one of them have terrorist links or are former terrorists. Pauline Lal Haukip, the one who freed rioters on bail, like we discussed last time on 27th April, he is a former spokesperson of the cookie terrorist group KNF. So, such kind of people are still operating in the political system and they have not been suspended. They are not even attending and doing proper political work and earning a salary of 2,50,000 per month. But here is the government and the systematic weakness coming up. Mm, you cannot throw them out directly. That won't solve the problem because another terrorist or criminal will come up. But you can definitely force through reforms like this village chief system abolition and ask for greater accountability from the people. That thing is not being addressed, the accountability, and that is a huge issue. And that can be addressed through this system. I do not believe that we have to wait for a Hindu system or something like that. No, Hindu system is just a name and a frame of mind. What we need to ensure is push clear demands and demand accountability from politicians who claim to represent our interests. Keep clear demands
Yes,
and
and
not let them manipulate
government,
us.
it can do everything that is possible, that is within its hands, to provide political and economic justice to the indigenous people, such as rolling back the newly created districts or reorganizing the existing districts so as to keep all the native people uh, under one umbrella.
Robin, can you hear me? You can unmute and take your question.
Yeah, thank you. I can hear you. Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, host, for giving me opportunity to share something. I'm from Manipur. I just have one simple question that whatever the Vladimir ji and the Ankita ji have shared, it is a very fantastic form of analysis. They have done it, and which has been going on for so long in Northeast, in Manipur, and the mainland Indians, ignore, or I don't know, it was a very huge ignorance from the mainland Indian, and this is very quite astounding to see that still we are not having a very vocal and voicing the concern that that slow demographic invasion has been going on the eastern border. Now the tipping point has happened. The eastern border is in turmoil. Our western border has been in a turmoil for so long, and who wants to keep India busy in internal matters with all these turmoils on the borders? That's the very interesting. And the my last concern is whatever has been happening in Northeast, like Ryans, Brus, all other Hindus, that has been systematically wiped out in last so many years. What other people have been doing it? Because for the other community with the single the religion, the Christianity, they stand together, whether it is right or wrong, whatever. But we have been so ignorant and what's have been happening on the Northeast, and the people have suffered from us, and they have been chased out from their own land, and that's happening again in Manipur. And the Maitai Vaishnavite Hindus are the last standing Hindus on the eastern border, and they have the last settlement of Hindus on the eastern border.
Robin, your question?
I know Robin ji. I think he has been an activist working on ground as well as an educationist. I think he just gave a desperate call for help. That is all.
Yes, yes. And yeah, that's the really, the real thing we have been trying in so long, and it has been. And thank you very much that many people have started noticing it. So, what is the way forward? How to prevent this in future? That's my question.
Uh, Robin ji, first of all, I have talked about this in detail. First thing is that vision should be clear. I will go against the grain and say it. There will never be peace between the Kuki-Chin Mizo language speakers and any community. It has not happened between Ryangs. It has not happened between Brus. It has not happened between Chakmas. It has not happened between Marmas, Mogs, Tripuri. The entire Shanti Bahini had to be found in Bangladesh under their horrible atrocities, particularly abuse on temples and women. So these kind of things, and with the matriarchal society structure of Northeast, they had been able to get away with most of it. You know very well how many victims of mighty victims women had been horribly violated, but only one woman has been able to muster up the courage to file FIRs. So they had been able to get away with a lot of things. So first problem is we have to set this vision clear that we have to get a stronger position, we have to force military operations against them, then only we can get peace. Second thing, you cannot give special rights to illegal immigrants, you cannot give special rights to people, you cannot give ST rights to non-indigenous people of a state. Even I am against the very term tribal because that is a colonial term which is being debunked in many studies as having no relevance. But still, as a first step, these should be the basic fundamental things. So de-recognition of buffer zone, doing military operations, ensuring the highways remain open, and then doing proper kind of investment on your education system. I have talked. We will talk about this in a future session, Vidyaji and Ravishankarji. The education system and deracination in Northeast has created a fatal lapse. The younger generation, it is the social cohesion during these times of crisis falls apart after 2 or 3 months when the pressure really starts getting, when your employees and other office people can no longer understand, no longer want to understand these things, that zeal to go back, that is where the native culture and history comes, that is not there. Research on those parts, then lot of other things, border security. I do not believe fencing the border and FMR regime is good enough. We have seen that fail in West Bengal. You need a clear buffer zone of 20 kilometers where no one will be allowed to settle, or people, very limited people which under surveillance or under specific conditions will be allowed to settle with a near shoot at sight order for the security forces. That will allow you to actually monitor the border. So first thing, your society has to frame your demands in an aggressive, proper manner. Still, you are trying to consolidate, which won't work. Second thing, the seriousness of the issue is not being communicated in Manipuri literature to internally within your society. Lot of people are there who are still not understanding the impact of land prices and other things and how quickly these things can drive and force mass migrations. It is like an exponential curve. So this awareness has to be there. Third thing, awareness among the mid and lower level leaders of your various socio-cultural groups. That has to be there. It is extremely important that they understand that money and political parties bidding at this case may lead to permanent destruction. Fourth thing, your politicians, many of whom were busy acting as glorified paparazzis during ministry formation while Jiribam was burning, including some of your cabinet ministers, they have to be held in account. Fifth, huge protests in Delhi is very much necessary to draw the attentions of people. And to the rest of Bharatiyas, I would say, let us have there are lots of organizations like with the Manipuris, like World Maiti Council, Maiti Heritage Society, who are working on trying to give sustenance to the people. The biggest problem is that the Maiti society has been bearing the entire burden of it themselves. It's a huge burden. Many people are donating 80%, 85% of their salary monthly for years to do this. People have sacrificed their children's education, their diaspora. That much I have examples. So now food is not the issue. The issue is finance for rebuilding houses, at least so that the population can move to the periphery, so that there is no this will and a decision that other people are there. So for this purpose, Vidyaji, Ravi Shankarji, I would request you give my Twitter account to them, my email ID. Anybody who wishes to contact, I will set you contact with different organizations for this purpose. And it would be highly appreciated, any financial support for this. And third thing, there has to be nationwide noise on this. We cannot allow a second Kashmir to happen in the age of social media. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Robiji, for the question. Manoj Nair, go ahead. All right. I will take one question which was posted in the comment section, which is regarding the secularism and the religious conversions that is going on. I understand actually, the secularism is actually coincides with the anti-Hindu approach generally in India. So, isn't it high time that we have laws against conversion? Does it have anything to do with the violence that is happening over there? I know it is, but I'm asking for the sake of
yes. The conversion matter. See, the decline in Manipuri Hindu population has been sharp since the 1990s. 1991 to 2011, 16% Hindu population decline, which is more than the contemporary Hindu decline population of Pakistan and Bangladesh combined. In fact, more than double. So this is overall Manipur. Now coming back to the worst affected areas, Churachandpur, Tengnopal, Chandel, the Meitei majority fell from 50% to less than 20% between 1986 to 2021. So this is the rate of demographic change. Then coming back to Churachandpur, the Hindu population in Churachandpur district was fallen to less than 4.3%, 4.28 by 2011. The Hindu population in Chandel district fell to 7.5% by 2011. Now these people, first day itself, 20,000 people were displaced. 98% of the Hindu population and most of the Meitei population of Churachandpur were thrown out within May 5th and 6th. Ikau and other villages north of Dolaithabi, the 3,000 strong, most of the population were wiped out there. More and Tengnopal district, 6,500 people, which is an overwhelming majority of the Meitei population, almost the total one, were thrown out. More than 300 people were forced to seek shelter in Burmese parts. So there is no way of claiming that there is no religious angle. How can you explain 1,500 temples destroyed? How can you explain the rampant attacks until everything is reduced to dust? How can you explain the attacks on cultural heritage sites like Maharaja Chandrakirti's memorial, Maharaja Narasing's statue, which were wiped out, burned down, repeatedly attacked? So this has religious angle. But more than, see, I would love if secularism is wiped out, that term. But more realistic goal would be creating alternatives for church-controlled educational institutes and healthcare centers, because these two are the backbone of destroying society. That is one more easier achievable goal, step one, I would say.
Absolutely. My next question is where Adithya was talking about, the previous questioner was asking about. He was saying about the central government was not able to do things in the last 10 years and all. My question is based around that. In the last 10 years, I understand that the developments happened in Northeast is unprecedented. There was no developments going on in the previous regimes, and the central government did a lot of effort in developing the Northeast compared to anybody else. But there are still flaws. It is not complete. It is far from complete. There are many issues actually circulating around it. My question is, the development that they did, does it have anything to do with the Manipur violence that is happening now? Does it cause to
excellent question. It has, yes, it has a major angle. When the Kukis fought the Nagas, they fought for the two inputs. Kangpokpi in the north, from Nagaland entering Manipur, NH2, and the second input was More, the international border town. Jiribam was not there. I am 100% sure if Jiribam was developed, Jiribam would have been the third point of attack. Now they are attacking the third point of attack. Serau Sugnu, the town of Serau saw a medieval time like King Arthur and those Agincourt and our, Hamir Singh's siege of Chittor, like what we see in movies. Our Maharajas doing Shivaji Maharaja's siege, like that kind of siege for 1 week. Imagine that. People were burnt alive, 80-year-old freedom fighter's wife, Gorkhas were shot dead. People say it's a Kuki Meitei clash. No, it's not. Multiple communities, even in the middle of this clash, has been wiped out. Gorkha major exoduses took place for 3 districts. So these kind of things, what it is going on, it is very important that we understand the perspective that Serau and Sugnu has a 4-lane highway which connects to More and other parts. This highway is also a major point of contention. Also, from the first day itself, the conflict majority has been, Imphal Valley has been attacked within Imphal Valley. In fact, Churachandpur town and Kangpokpi town, the two district headquarters lie in Imphal Valley, if you open Google Maps. So first day itself, the conflict has been from the Imphal Valley, and 99% of the conflict has been going on in Imphal Valley itself. So infrastructure grabbing is also a major part of it, because it eases their task. In fact, one of the major things which they are doing, the cookies, are building illegal roads without informing the state and central government. So yes, They are creating their infrastructure for facilitating parallel economy, weapons trade, and all kinds of activities.
Thank you. The second part of the question is why they chose Manipur. The central government was actually developing Northeast as a whole, but why they chose Manipur, and does it have anything to do with the upcoming elections during that time, that it was a conspiracy to destabilize India and maybe affect the election results and everything? Does it have anything to do with it?
Yes, Manipur they chose. I will come to the first question first. Manipur they chose because of few major reasons. One is, if we see Assam now, Assam shares a border with Bangladesh, and Bangladesh, they're already harassing a lot Sheikh Hasina, the election, her words, St. Martin's Island, where America wants an air base there to dominate the Indo-Pacific region, as well as have a refueling stops for their further operations in Middle East. Those things are pretty much in public domain. So this is one part which is there. They are already destabilizing Bangladesh, and America did not just go through Manipur. They also financed ULFA and other terrorist groups. Why? One, to give a secular color. One is a religious ethnic group. One is a secular. One is a religious terrorist group. One is an ethnicity-based terrorist group, which does its violence on ethnicity. So that gives them a counter argument to build a narrative on. So it's not that they're only focusing on Manipur, but their major thrust has been Manipur because it hurts us the most. The impact of creating a second Christianistan here is tough to calculate, because if you are cut off from the Southeast Asia, your geopolitical influence goes, your cultural influence goes, you have to take a huge amount of gamble to do that. Even this Kaladan project, for that India had to beg Bangladesh for 20 years and Bangladesh refused. The Chattogram port and those things, that would have been a much easier route. Then India was forced to go through Burma. Now this thing happens. So this Kaladan project being hampered is also a major thing. And also, more than Assam, Manipur, and these, which the separatist state which they are planning, this is a ready-made jigsaw puzzle which they had invested a long time, taking parts of Assam, Mizoram, Manipur, Tripura, as well as Burma and Bangladesh, the Chattogram hill tracts, which allows them to fulfill all kinds of geopolitical things which you won't get in other parts of Bharat, like the warm water port in Chattogram hill tracts. You won't get that. So that allows them an easy access to flood materials in case of problems. Resupply.
Clearly, it has to do with India's the diamond necklace project, which is part of it, and it clearly has to do with the India's projects that is going on.
Definitely, the projects that has been going on. In fact, I find it ironic that the Arakan army and other groups, they had not attacked the Kaladan investment as such, but they had advanced towards there. They took Paletwa. So definitely, the civil war in Myanmar has affected us adversely and given them a huge blackmailing chip. And here I would like to differ a little bit. I do not expect the Indian government to go there guns blazing like 1948. It is a very tricky, delicate situation there. What I am more concerned about is why the internal terrorists are being pampered to a large extent. Why you like? I remember Hillary Clinton quoting, "You cannot put snakes in your own backyard." So I have a very much premonition that this is something like this, because the cookies, considering their history and the way how which they operate, I don't think this will end up well.
Very clear. I will ask one more question, which is very much actually related to what I have been asking, and then Vidya ji can ask questions, and I'll come back to it. Very bluntly, who are the anti-India forces that is working behind this violence?
The biggest anti-India force and element is the US behind this. Next, UK. Third, China. Fourth, European Parliament. And they are the supplying forces. Weapons, there are private contractors and Chinese mafia and gangsters which are operating in Burma. They are operating a large amount of weapons, rackets, and other things. Most of it are cross-border. Also, both the Kukis and Meiteis have developed an extensive repertoire of developing handheld weaponry art or weaponry craftsmanship. So even if they take away all the weapons or they manage to disarm both groups, I don't know how effective will be. They will have primitive weapons, handheld weapons, but they will have still weapons because that art both societies have been forced to learn. So this is one thing. Now, so this is about the weapons. Now coming about the other anti-India forces, I would like to say one thing. The Congress party, there was a circular published by every single Janajati in the hill area advising them to vote for Congress. And that circular was given during this Lok Sabha elections, irrespective of the na- nature of the terrorist groups or other groups demanding that we boycott elections. So actually, if you see, instead of brute violence of the more ruffians or thuggish elements, terrorists, they chose political prudence. And Congress basically guaranteed an administrative solution to them. Now that word, most of us find it very dangerous based upon this. So I think that so there might be some talks which we are not privy of, so we cannot give them clean sheet on this matter. Especially the way they raised the issue one-sided in Parliament while ignoring the sufferings of a community which suffered more in this case. Casualties are not everything. When you are confined, you are starving. This is not that one-sided representation was dangerous. So these, I would say, also there were people like Tista Shitalwat, there were other people, there were Ambedkarite India and other so-called Dalit handles who ran a massive atrocity and hate campaign against the women of Manipur. For 1 month, the most filthy memes and other things were circulated in social media against the so-called Myra Paibis. Now, I would like to say Myra Paibi is not a group. It's not an organized thing. It is just women coming in trying to protect their interests and protect their people. And it is the women who protected the Manipuri society during the great 1990 terrorism and drug menace. So that is what they're trying to do. And the one-sided vilification and the ignoring the activities of the Kuki women, which are very similar on the other side, these are creating problems. The English-speaking media particularly has been horribly biased, and Angomcha Bimala Koijam, former educationist and the current MP in our Manipur constituency, he had published a report on website which will come in book form at the end of this month, where he has documented thousands of such instances of media manipulation and perception manipulation, particularly by English-speaking media, vilifying native people and Hindus. So these, I would say, sum up pretty much.
It may make perfect sense for Sheikh Hasina's comment that a white man approached for a Christian nation. Vidya ji, go ahead.
Vladimir ji, as you had mentioned about, there are issues, the reason why the central government is not taking much of an action because of what the Western media would say, saying that, they are going against minorities are in danger. That's what you had mentioned. But we do know now for a fact that with facts and figures, that Christian cookies are no longer, or rather, they cannot be called the minority anymore. So why are they still being given the minority status?
This is a hypocrisy of media. Also, media shifts goalposts a lot. Sometimes they will tell at national scale, sometimes they will tell at state scale, but they will not mention the scale, what they are doing. So that is what they are doing. And Editors Guild of India was caught for spreading 47 fake news in their report. They went to Supreme Court, and it was ruled out that spreading fake news basically in a war zone where the integrity of the country's stake is a right of a journalist. So I won't comment on this pretty so for obvious reasons but I think you all can get it. And also coming back to this thing, it is more than the Western media, I would say, the blackmail of the rebel forces, because these rebel forces in Myanmar are totally controlled by the West. If they want, they can create a huge problem and permanently cripple our Actist and Kaladan project. That is the bigger blackmailing chip. The Western media and these things, I would say, are more of a nuisance value. But yes, in case of past governments, mere media posturing has been enough. to stop the government from discharging its duties properly. So I am not absolutely sure, but at least I wish with my all heart and mind that is not that our government is not that much compromised in that case. It's the second case, if I wish at least.
Right. Thank you, Vladimir.
Yep. Even the point that you were making, the infiltration happened or on these places actually now over a lot of decades, probably 30 or 40 years or more. The infiltration was keep on happening, and how the misgovernance of the previous governments, I may say, including the last 10 years of BJP government included, how that misgovernance aided for the infiltration, and how can actually this infiltration happen for such a long time and cause such a big issue?
Because, first of all, the Burma, there was a large scale instability and civil war since 1948. So there was always people moving in. Now the problem was that Manipur, there was a permit system till 1950. So that permit system was removed in the middle of a civil war, horrible civil war, at which more than 75% of Burma fell to the rebel forces, the Karens, the communist civil war which were going on. So in the middle of that, that permit system was removed without putting a proper monitoring in there. So that left Manipur defenseless. Between 1951 and 1961, the population of Thado Kuki, a community of the Kukis, Kuki language speaking community, that grew by 177% within one decade. So illegal immigration started from the 1950s itself, large scale illegal immigration. We have evidences of large scale illegal immigration in the 1960s, like Henkosei, Houkeep, and other things. At least 10,000 people, 1,500 families who were actually paid by the central government contemporary to resettle and have a good life here. But after that, they were never demarcated as illegal immigrants. All of them became scheduled tribes, took benefits, and settled here. Henkosei Houkeep lived as a wonderful life as a Mool Nivasi Bharatiya before passing away in 2015 and having a family, all of whom enjoy scheduled tribe rights. So these kind of things have continued. The 1988 illegal immigration wave alone was enough to invert the demography of More. So these level of in fact, between 1951 to 2011, the population of Thado Kukis had increased by 2,506%, which is more than 8.5 times that of the contemporary Meitei population. 850% more than that. Even census manipulations could not account for such a growth. So then the Wi-Fi community, their population increased by 912%. Like Ankita ji was telling, the Mar community, even after accounting for so much population growth in Assam, their population also grew more than the Meiteis in Manipur. So the illegal immigration is a very true fact. Why it was not monitored? Because because the Burmese border and the free movement regime and those kind of things was never addressed by any government. The Naga insurgency, the Mizo insurgency, full-scale warfare was going on for a long time. So until 1990s, the government had bigger concern than illegal immigration, frankly. And the misgovernance started mainly between 1949 to 1970. They created a remote-controlled system with horrible mismanagement that led to a total collapse of the economy and an unaccountable politician class who did not do justice to the aspirations of the people. And that created very dangerous insurgency even among the Manipuris in Manipur. The Chinese people swept in, the education system went to the Marxists and the church, who basically divided it like a cake, higher education, middle education, everything. So then the effects of it were felt. A highly deracinated generation, lot of anti-India sentiments there. So these kind of stuff, it became a very complicated situation. So after the 1990s and other things, the government decided to address the key issue, particularly the last 10 years, which is the geographical isolation and trying to bring peace in there. But this illegal immigration of these migrants coming there, this was never addressed, and unfortunately the church and many of these cookie groups were used as cheap vote banks by both the current ruling and previous government and many other local governments too. top heavy society. So it's very easy to get vote banks.
Shall I add actually something to that, or put actually?
Yes, sure.
Is the current central government is actually a bit actually wokist in nature. They don't want to do anything that is out of the book. They don't want to do anything actually that is seen as actually a hard hand or anything like that. And they would want to be fair in all eyes and all that, which is causing them to use brute force and actually curbing it properly.
Yeah, that is an issue. But the danger is that here you cannot justify their demand, because their problem is that non-Christians and non-Kuki Chinmizo people exist. Now, how do you address that? That is a bit tough to address, right? So that is the major issue. Separate administration, if you give them, you will see a Meghalaya, Mizoram like mass exodus with large-scale murder of native people, murder, rape, torture, throwing out, and most probably state government will play a major underhanded devious role there if they give them a separate state or something like that. Or even, and let us just add these things, the role of these, they sent 4 memorandums like to countries like Israel, Germany, and Britain, as well as to the European Union and other groups. The Britain one is the recent one, May 3rd, 2024. There, they even one of the possible solutions which they mentioned, they even said, okay, Britain can come and rule over the independent Kuki land and allow us to form a Christian kingdom and enjoy our resources alone. So you understand basically the level of deracination and the level of delusion which these people have. That is which has spread there.
Another Article 370, basically.
Not even that. They are willing to sacrifice their freedom to Britain just to stay in the name of church and just to get away from the so-called Hindu nation India. In fact, there had been horrible, horrible messages against Hinduism and Indian people put in groups like NAMTA, North American Cookie Group, in from May, June itself. Now they have toned it down and trying to hide it, but it's there. That xenophobia, that hatred, very clearly visible.
Absolutely. And I do believe actually only if anybody would do anything, that would be the current central government. I don't think India Alliance or anybody else would do anything for the sake of the people and all. I do accept that fact. And I do hope actually they will do something and clear the situation soon enough. On that front, in terms of lawmaking and all that, what laws actually that would clear the air in that area and make it a bit more peaceful? I'm talking about lawmaking.
Lawmaking, see, first law which I would recommend in this situation is giving the army a free hand to flush out armed miscreants there. This is first thing, whatever laws that is needed, whether it is AFSPA, whether this is thing, this has to be given, particularly in the hill areas. There is nothing being done there, no major operations, only some minor search and comb things, some weapon caches and other things which are being recovered. But there is ample evidence about the lack of hard action. So that has to be there. Second thing, the Manipur Land Revenue and Land Reforms Act, that has to be amended. You have to allow all people access to all the lands, buying everywhere. You cannot have different people with different land rights based upon a colonial policy which has no relevance whatsoever to geographical realities. This is not British Bharat. So let us leave that. This is thing. Second thing, the District Councils Act 1971 and Article 371C.
We have a very interesting question from Robin. Robin is saying,
yes,
the Kuki militants are getting stipend from the government, which is coming out of the taxpayers' money. And if the government stops that stipend that is being given to them, it would control the violence over there. How do you respond?
I would come to that later. First, I'll complete the lawmaking thing, the lawmaking fiasco which is going on. And let me turn on the video. For some reason, it is not turning on for some reason. Okay.
Go ahead. I'll let it.
Okay. I'll continue then. Okay. For some reason, first thing, whenever we are coming Article 371C, this Article 371C allows formation of district council. Now, if you're an indigenous Manipuri people or a Madwari or a businessman who do not have, or a Bihari who do not have ST rights in the so-called autonomous hill districts there, you do not have any electoral representation there. You cannot stand in elections. Second problem, you cannot buy land there unless it's a mortgage or so cooperation, these kind of things, mortgage or club or society in these cases. So it is very difficult for you there also. Now with this district council, this gives near autonomous power for people where you do not have representation in the district council. So they can basically impose anything on you. So their voices of these victims have been suppressed, silenced. Nobody listened to it because there was nobody to speak to for over 50 years. So these Article 371C have to be amended. 2002 SC/ST Amendment Act gives any Kuki tribe and any Lushai tribe, I'm quoting, the status of scheduled tribe in Manipur, which should not be. This has allowed illegal immigrants from Burma who speak any Kuki language to come in, get illegal documents from village chiefs who can give them residential certificates, and then legally apply for Aadhaar card and other things through ICICI Bank, Churchanpur branch, and other those things, bank facilities, even without forging documents, those things, so they can apply for those things. And village chiefs have the authority to issue residential certificates, again, near autonomous power. So this, any Kuki Lushai tribe has to be removed from 2002. Then there is a gazette notification which was passed in 2022 by the state government, which tells anybody with scheduled tribe status in Manipur is an indigenous citizen. So this basically declares the Kukis as indigenous citizens of Manipur, which is historically false. So these four amendments would have to be corrected. And regarding Robinji's statement on the agreement, more than the money, I have the problem with the provision that security forces won't be able to do operations against them. Because these agreement, the SU agreement, this has lot of terms that they have to stay in designated camps. They cannot do extortion, killings, and these things they're violating almost daily with sickening frequency. They have recruited, which was not allowed under SU agreement. So this agreement abrogation is a major thing. Now the problem is this SU agreement is renewable, and this was supposed to lapse in February 29, 2024. But after that, the government has been totally tight-lipped, silent, both the state and center. Nobody has given any concrete answers whether this has been renewed or whether this is still abrogated. So even if you abrogate SU, the major part is that you have given now the security forces can do operations, but still the command to do operation has to come, right? That is also a major part which is missing.
Very clear. See if you can turn on the camera, Vladimirji. The one more question. You were mentioning actually, the militants are posing as the hunters as well as the victims. See, what kind of media or actually media houses that is propagating them as victims or to the general public? Can you name some of the media houses that are actually acting for them, or activists or organizations or anybody for that matter?
Washington Post, New York Post, then Make Peace, Sit Low, activists upon there, and then Testa Sitalwat to some extent, then Priyanka Chaturvedi. She only spoke up about the Kuki issues but did not raise any other matters. Basically, the Bhim army, the tribal army, these people are raising up. Then many of these newspapers like the Wire, Print, Scroll, Caravan, Mint, then these are some of the major portals which are blatantly spreading false narratives. There are various portals which are masking truth, which are spreading them in a favorable light. like India Today Northeast, they have put some very provocative and false articles, but they did not spread such fake narratives like those other houses.
Clear. From my side, my last question, we were talking about the Christian nation. What factors do you think would stop such a thing from happening?
First thing, to stop this Christian nation from happening, you have to curb the power of the church, because church is the binding glue. The moment the church's hold on education institutes and healthcare centers goes away, the moment you start auditing the church lands to see how many illegal churches they have constructed and grabbed in by land grabbing for land grabbing purposes, and start taking action. The moment the government has taken one good action, they have suspended the FCRA licenses of four major organizations which were operating in Manipur. So large scale suspension of FCRA licenses. But again, they have committed blunder. February 19th, they gave 10 acres of land, 19 acres of land to an institute which is dedicated fully used for pastor training only. Now, pastor training, what it does, everybody knows. So these kind of things, that is a very dangerous precedent which should not be done. So these things, if you do, then their own internal dynamics, their own internal lack of understanding, their own internal greed will fragment their society. And once a society is fragmented, then this Christian nation narrative will fall apart. Then you can try to integrate them with Bharat, try to bring them back to their native faith, try to help them encourage Bharatiya principles like love of nature, love of ancestors back into their society. You can do, the possibilities are endless. But for that, the church has to first.
Absolutely. So, Vidyaji, from my side, all questions are over. Vidyaji?
Yeah, I guess that's about it. I guess we should be having more sessions, Vladimir ji, with you and Ankita ji. I'm sure you will have a lot more content to share. The time, I just have one question regarding your book. When can we expect your book to come out, Vladimir ji?
Is the editing is going on right now. So editing, after that, I think the publisher will obviously have a look, and then we will have it. I think it's within 1.5 months. We were planning to release it in April, but then there were so many new happenings there that without describing that, the crisis would have been incomplete. So this is one of the pitfalls of describing an ongoing thing. You have to keep reworking. It's almost like a version control document, which has become.
Right. So you will probably need to keep, updating it also with your next versions, with each version.
I think it will be that talks are there, updating it or new editions, but that can only be finalized with my esteemed co-authors and the publisher. So, because I still consider myself to be the minor player in this thing. Manashi ji and Ankita ji have been stalwarts in the Northeast, so I'm basically learning from them.
I don't think they think that way about you. Anyway, it's been a fabulous session, Vladimir ji. Very very eye-opening, mind-blowing, and also very very heartbreaking. And I pray that there will be some kind of a respite for this situation, and that somewhere something will start working soon. And your efforts are not going to be in vain. So wishing you all the very best. Thank you so much for joining us.
Rigji, before you leave, the next topic probably we should touch upon is the laws that we should make to curb the problems over there, and why these laws are important. Example, the Land Revenue and Acquisition Act, Article 371C. Such things, we have absolutely no idea how it actually gives a free hand or a helping the perpetrators over there, and how amending these acts would help bringing back peace to Manipur. We should definitely do a session on the laws that is at the moment is not properly done. And I wish you all the best. We would try to actually give our best support and exposure and as much as possible, and all blessings in terms of carrying out your holy duty.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Vidya ji, Ravishankar ji. It means a lot to have independent platforms like this. Hope you guys grow a lot.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
And
so
we are
much.
happy, that you are coming forward with so much of content that, and I pray that you get all the necessary help. All the best.